Hello and welcome to another episode of the Gentle Business Space podcast. I'm Fabi, I'm a nervous system friendly business and systems mentor, and I support other sensitive women build an aligned and sustainable and heart-centered business with more clarity and calm and structure so that you can really grow your business without burning out. And something that I've noticed in myself and others and that I would want to talk about today is that when we're growing and working within our business, we can often set ourselves up for failure. And I've noticed how that can really impact our self-trust. So I want to say that I'm saying this, I don't think we're doing this consciously a lot of the times, but I really notice the impact it has. And again, I'm not saying it in a harsh way, really just a gentle observation of what we might be experiencing. So I think it's that kind of pattern of when we don't follow through on our day-to-day decisions, and again, not in a judgmental way, that can often have an impact on how we trust ourselves whilst running our business and just in general. I think we often have a tendency of taking on too much, to plan without enough time or to schedule things in our diary even though we don't have capacity. And maybe because we feel like we should be doing more or because other people are doing these kind of things. And that all these kind of little decisions and big decisions can often have a huge impact on how we trust ourselves. So a few examples that I've experienced myself and as well as seeing in others, there's a few examples I wanted to share. So let's start with kind of content creating. I think we all experienced it, that we overcommit to, I'm going to post daily or create a weekly blog post or weekly podcast, whatever it is. And you might stick to that briefly, but then something happens or you lose motivation or you simply just can't really keep up alongside other commitments. And then you feel bad for that you couldn't commit to it. Maybe you feel like you're letting yourself down or that you failed again. Said I'm going to do this, but why can't I just keep up with it? I know I've felt like this before. Another example might be launches for a course or group offer, whatever it is. And you suddenly have an idea for an offer and you want to execute it straight away. And maybe you give yourself 2-3 weeks to the launch date. So the course start date is like in 3 weeks' time. And I'm not saying that can't happen, but depending on what stage in your business you are, and if it's more kind of that beginning phase, that might be really, really difficult to actually fill the course. So by the time the course starts and you hardly have any sign-ups, you end up feeling like you failed again. Again, I've been through this cycle many, many times. Another example is maybe you plan to have a certain date, like certain days during the week off. Maybe you work a lot weekends, you want to have a certain day during the week off, or the other way around, really committing to having your weekends off. But every time you end up taking on more work, you're agreeing on something else, and kind of that thought of, it's okay, I squeeze it in. And there goes your weekend, your Saturday morning, your Sunday, maybe even. So constantly kind of that overcommitting and taking on more. And I know when you're self-employed and you run your own business, that tendency is quite big because, you want to earn money. But again, you kind of wanted to commit to that day off for yourself and then we take something else on. So it doesn't happen. And another example more on the tech side maybe is if you have a new system or you need to set up maybe a freebie funnel for an event that's coming up. And especially if tech isn't kind of your strong side, and then you don't give yourself enough time either to set it up. And then it becomes a really stressful, overwhelming experience. Maybe you give up on it. It's like, I just can't do this. So these are also just a few examples. I think there's a lot of scenarios on our day-to-day where these kind of things can happen. And again, this is completely without any judgment. It's just noticing with compassion, noticing what's going on so we can shift. So there are many more examples like that. And with all of that, I also don't mean that we can't push ourselves or expand. However, I think we often don't give ourselves enough time. And when things don't work out, we then feel like we failed. And I know I have many times. This was a really strong pattern for me and really part of my burnout cycle for a long time. So really pushing, trying to make everything work straight away without really putting foundations in place or a proper plan or, really having a structure. And then crashing when things don't work out. And I felt like I failed again. So maybe this pattern resonates, or even just that quiet pattern of making plans and not following through. But what I've noticed that happens is that we start to lose self-trust when we're in that pattern. We do something and then don't do it for whatever reason. And if we think about someone else doing that to us, we would probably stop trusting them after a while. And if you notice that pattern in yourself, again, please don't be harsh with yourself. I think we need to invite compassion and really understand that we're just trying to do our best. And I think a lot of the times it's also that all that outside noise telling us all the things we should be doing. And then it just becomes a bit too much, really. And I think what happens, I think when we're in that pattern, when we're experiencing this, what we need to do is really look on why it happens. So are you over planning? Maybe there are some mindset beliefs that, keep stopping us. Or is it simply needing maybe guidance and support? So there could be different things what's going on. One other thing I've noticed with that is that we often plan when we're in a really good place. We're feeling really good, we're feeling spacious, we have capacity, and therefore we maybe slightly overplan. And then we don't take into consideration what happens if we don't have capacity or aren't feeling well. So I think we forget that part sometimes. So we have all these plans in place, and then it comes to it, and life happens. There's things going on, general capacity, and we kind of ignored that. And then we're really struggling again. So again, it's just something to notice. And it also doesn't mean that we can only plan hardly anything. But it's something to be aware of. So, and I think to help us start shift out of this pattern and slowly start building self-trust again, we can start with smaller commitments. I think as always, it comes back to slowing down, especially if you have experienced burnout or with that, your capacity being a bit smaller. And we really need to honor that. So if you experience burnout, yes, if you're just coming out of that, your capacity is going to be a little bit smaller. You can't just dive into the full load. And even any other scenario as well, where you feel like you don't have more capacity for all these different work things. We really need to honor that. So we can slowly build self-trust again by listening to what we actually can do, being curious and open. And I know it's hard to allow ourselves to do less. And you will probably notice how you slowly start to trust yourself again when we start doing that. And with that, we also build capacity again. So when we slowly start to build that self-trust, to noticing, okay, what do I actually have capacity for, and honoring that, we're also gradually starting to expand our capacity again. So what can that all really look like? It might be only planning 2 social media posts a week, because that's what you actually have time to create content for. there's no point, squeezing more. And if that's physically all the time you have, then stick with that. And you will notice how when you actually do this every week and say, oh, I've done it. I've done it this week. I've done it last week. That self-trust comes. It might mean putting the start date for an event that you really want to do a little bit further back in the year to really give yourself time to promote it, and then slowly promoting it instead of rushing through it and then it's not happening. Maybe it means letting go of potential commitments or ideas as you don't actually have time for it. You could come back to them later. You could write all your ideas or, things you want to do in your business. You can write them all down and then being really clear about what do you have time for now and what can wait till later. Maybe it's about saying no to things you don't want to do. Giving yourself more time to learn it, that new tech platform or system that you've just committed to. Really allowing yourself to learn it with way more time so you can slowly grow your self-confidence with it. And I think it's really important that we learn to understand our time capacity. I think so many times we just have our list of to-dos and I think we have to squeeze them all without completely disregarding what do we actually have time for. So really learning to understand our time capacity, being really clear, maybe in our diary, having clear time blocks, and starting to learn what can actually be done in that time. So it's again being a little bit curious if you're not sure, but starting to notice, okay, I have this time block. Let's see what I can do in that time, what's realistic, and then you can learn from that for the next time for when you're planning. So you don't overcommit to how much admin or planning or creating you can really do during a week, or how many projects you can actually take on. And again, once you then kind of notice, okay, I'm actually doing what I'm sticking what I said I'm going to do because it's realistic, we start to build that self-trust again. So it's really about starting to really listen to yourself and understanding how much capacity you have. And that doesn't have to be a radical shift. You can slowly start to shift and make gentle changes, giving yourself a little bit more time. And at the beginning, it might feel really, really scary to have more time and to say no to commitments or projects, even though there's a bit of white space in your diary. But actually, you have committed to have that time off. And it's really difficult to say, no, I can't do that. It's not within my capacity. When your diary actually feels really spacious. But remember, you want to keep it spacious. You want to keep it, you don't want to fill every second of it. Because all that white space in your diary will also help you nourish you for the work time. And also, again, it's that, you committed to say, okay, I have these times off. So I'm not taking anything off that will take time away from that. But it will all become easier over time, one little step at a time. And you might notice how it shifts your trust in yourself. So starting to maybe be quite curious and open and noticing how that might change how you approach things. And once that self-trust starts to grow again, often I've noticed that it kind of helps you start growing your capacity again as well to take on different things. But again, taking kind of one step at a time, taking it really slowly. Okay, so as we're coming to an end, I would love to invite you to just gently, with compassion, notice where in your business could you make little shifts to build that self-trust again. And it might not just be your business. Maybe it's the in-between time of committing to your times off or your breaks and really sticking to them. Or maybe there's an area where you tend to overcommit and always ends up feeling too much. Maybe there's a gentle change you can make. So what gentle shift or more aligned shift can you make as a small step forward? So as always, I would love to hear any insights you had, what resonated from today's episode. Let me know in the comments or message me. And if you like more support with creating a business that really honors your capacity, building that self-trust and that really gentle approach, I offer one-to-one mentoring where we can explore that together. So if you're interested, just get in touch if you'd like to find out more. So thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. I hope it was helpful, and I will see you again soon. Take care.